Dr. Elias Mora stood alone in the docking bay, the hum of starliners and the hiss of decompression vents filling the air. He wore a simple gray jumpsuit, sleeves rolled up to reveal slender forearms streaked with ink notes and sketches of alien flora. His heart beat with a curious mix of excitement and nervous hope. For months he had dreamed of a companion to share the long voyage beyond the rim, someone to laugh with, someone to talk to when the galaxy felt too vast and empty. He had posted a brief notice on the Interstellar Bulletin, "Seeks friendly. Companion for research trip, no weapons, no politics, just company." Simple words, honest words, sent out into a sea of opportunity. Elias wiped his palms on his jumpsuit and glanced at the transporter pad. He had programmed the coordinates and set the timer. In a few seconds, whoever answered his call would step into his modest life aboard the research vessel Aurora's Hope. He imagined a fellow scientist, perhaps a soft-spoken engineer or a cheerful botanist who loved to joke. He did not imagine royalty. He did not imagine a princess. A ripple of light appeared on the pad, and the glowing circle solidified into a tall figure. She wore a finely embroidered cloak of deep violet that trailed on the metallic floor. Her posture was graceful, regal, and yet she looked uncertain, as if she, too, had hesitated before stepping forward. Elias's breath caught. The stranger lifted her chin, and a silver circlet gleamed against her dark hair. She was a princess.
Dr. Elias Mora.
Her voice was soft with a gentle accent that he could not place. Her eyes shone like polished amber under the docking bay lights. Elias cleared his throat. I didn't expect royalty." He offered a friendly nod, forcing a calm that he did not feel. "Welcome, I'm Elias. Please, come aboard." Lips curved into a shy smile. "I am Kelleran of the Voseri Empire. I answered your call. I need company." He stepped aside and gestured to the airlock. "Company you shall have. The Aurora's Hope is humble but warm." He took her cloak and led her inside, careful not to touch the circlet. Every aspect of her presence spoke of courtly halls and diplomatic ceremonies, worlds away from his quiet research ship. Once inside, Kelleran paused at the threshold of his living quarters. The walls were lined with shelves holding sealed samples of glowing moss and bottled nebula dust. The table held steaming mugs of spiced tea. She inhaled deeply, setting aside the weight of diplomacy. Her shoulders relaxed in a rare moment of ease. Elias noticed. He poured 2 mugs and handed one to her. "This is cinnamon leaf tea. My favorite." He found himself smiling, glad to see a tentative spark of comfort in her eyes. She accepted the mug with slender fingers. "Thank you, Dr. Mora." She took a small sip and closed her eyes, savoring the warmth. "It is pleasant." Her voice held relief, as if she had crossed a desert and finally found water. He sat across from her. "Why did you answer my ad?" he asked gently. "Most people seek fame or profit. You could have had 1,000 offers of grandeur." Her amber eyes flickered with emotion. "I fled the palace. I wanted to escape ceremony and expectation. I longed to see life beyond golden halls. I saw your simple request and felt hope, a human heart that wanted only friendship." She paused, setting down her mug. "I feared you might reject me." Elias leaned forward, his curiosity alight. "Tell me about the palace," he said, "and about yourself." Kelleran smiled, a soft warmth in her gaze. She began to speak of crystal chandeliers, of corridors echoing with stately footsteps, of the burden of a crown pressed heavy on her brow. Elias listened, enchanted by her honest words. He realized that in sharing her story, she was trusting him with her true self. No titles, just a woman seeking a friend. In that quiet room, 2 souls from different worlds found a spark of connection. The stars outside might stretch endless and cold, but inside the Aurora's Hope, warmth glowed bright. Elias understood that this journey would not be what he had planned. It would be more. With Kelleran by his side, the vast dark of space seemed a place where hope and companionship could flourish, and where a simple request for company might change to lives forever. Dr. Elias Mora's footsteps echoed softly as he led Kelleran into the Aurora's Hope small mess hall. The walls glowed with pale blue panels, and the air smelled faintly of toasted rye and sweet vapor. Elias set 2 plates on the tabbouleh. Simple meal of roasted tuber slices, steamed greens, and nutrient broth. He watched her hesitate, the princess's regal posture giving way to uncertain politeness. He offered her the seat opposite his. "Please," he said gently, "sit." Kelleran settled onto the bench, smoothing the folds of her violet cloak. She held her hands in her lap, fingers brushing the silver circlet at her brow. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft hum of the ship's life support. Elias swallowed, meeting her amber gaze. "He seemed lonely," he said. "I thought a meal might help. On long voyages, food tastes better with company." Lips curved in a small, grateful smile. She picked up her spoon and tried a bite. Of tuber. Her eyes brightened. "It is comforting," she whispered. She paused, looking down at the pale broth. She set the spoon aside and inhaled deeply, as if gathering courage. Elias reached for his own mug of tea and placed it in front of her. "Take your time," he said softly. Kelleran traced the rim with a slender fingertip. "There is something I must tell you," she began, voice trembling like a soft song. Elias leaned forward, attentive and calm. She drew in a breath and spoke the words slowly. "I am cursed." His fork paused halfway to his mouth. He blinked, steadying himself. "Cursed?" he repeated, voice low but gentle. He set his fork down and folded his hands. "Tell me more." Her throat tightened. "In my blood," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "lies a poison born of ancient magic. My blood spills on another. It harms them. I have carried this secret since childhood." She looked at her hands, as though expecting to see dark veins pulsing beneath her skin. Ilias's heart squeezed at her confession. He imagined her fear, the weight of so many hidden dangers. He reached across the table. He hesitated, then dropped his hand, mindful of her distance. He wanted to touch her arm in reassurance, but he did not want to frighten her. Instead, he offered words. "Your secret is safe with me," he said. "I will not judge you." Kelleran's eyes glistened with tears she did not let fall. She closed them, drawing in a shaky breath. "I feared rejection," she admitted. "Every courtier feared me. Even my closest friends kept their distance." She swallowed. "I wished only for someone who would accept me fully, curse and all." Elias's curiosity and compassion blossomed. Together, he studied her with a slight tremor in her shoulders, the courage it took to share her truth. "You have that someone now," he said firmly. "We will find a way to understand your blood. I am a scientist. I can study it without fear." Her lips quivered as a hopeful smile broke across her face. "You would do that?" she whispered, voice full of surprise. He nodded. "Of course, knowledge never harms. And friendship does. Not ask for perfection." He reached again, brushing a comforting palm just above the table between them. "I want to learn everything about you, curse included." Kelleran exhaled, relief mingling with wonder. She lifted her gaze, meeting his earnest eyes. The hush of the mess hall felt sacred, as if time had paused for their moment of understanding. Outside, distant stars flickered against the void, but inside the Aurora's hope, warmth glowed brighter than solar banks. She picked up her spoon again, tasting the broth anew, as if savoring the promise of acceptance. Elias leaned back, heart lightened by her trust. He knew that their voyage would not be simple, but in that instant, he believed in their shared courage. Together they would face uncharted mysteries, bound by the gentle power of trust and the unbreakable bond of true companionship. Dr. Elias Mora guided Kelleran down the gently winding path of Saron's Loop's floating orchid grove. Pale petals drifted on the soft breeze, and the air smelled like honey and starlight. Underfoot, metal catwalks hovered above pools of shimmering water. Kelleran's violet cloak brushed against the blossoms, and she paused, letting a perfect white flower rest in her hand. Her amber eyes glowed with wonder. Elias watched her, glad to see worry fade from her features. He knelt by a coral-hued orchid to examine its bulbous base. This species only blooms once every 7 years, he explained in a low voice. He plucked a thin scanning rod from his belt and carefully observed the plant's bioluminescent veins. It feeds on faint cosmic radiation as the moons align. Kelleran leaned closer, her breath soft and warm. She traced the glowing veins with a slender finger, marveling at how life could adapt even in floating gardens. Elias straightened and offered the scanning rod to her. "You try," he said. "Feel its pulse." She hesitated, then gently pressed the rod against the orchid stem. Soft hum vibrated through her fingertips, as if the plant were whispering secrets. Her lips curved in a shy smile, and Elias felt a spark of delight. "It's alive," she whispered. "It's not just pretty." Elias nodded. Every world has its own heartbeat. They walked on, and Elias told her stories of human festivals on Earth. He spoke of lanterns on water, of drums that echoed through narrow streets, and of sweet cakes shared among friends. Kelleran listened, eyes shining. She touched his arm. Lightly. "Tell me more," she said. "What do you do when you are happy?" Elias laughed softly. "We sing songs and dance under the stars. Sometimes we clap, sometimes we simply hold hands." He paused, searching her face. "Would you like to try?" She tilted her head, curiosity bright in her gaze. Elias looked around for a clear space. Nearby, a cluster of orchids formed a natural circle. He took her hand and led her into the center. He hummed a simple melody, teaching her the rhythm of the human song he grew up with. At first, Kelleran moved cautiously, her royal training urging her to stand straight and still. Elias smiled and encouraged her to sway gently. Soon, her cloak floated around her like petals in the breeze. She laughed a soft musical sound that echoed among the blossoms. Elias joined in, lifting his arms to match her movement. Their steps were not perfect, but they were honest. She closed her eyes, letting the melody flow through her. For a moment, the weight of her crown and curse fell away, and she was simply a woman dancing among flowers. Elias watched, his heart full of warmth. When the tune ended, Kelleran opened her eyes, and a single tear glistened on her cheek. She brushed it away with the back of her hand. "Why do we cry when we are happy?" she asked softly. Elias offered her his handkerchief. "Tears are how humans show that joy can be overwhelming," he explained. "They remind us that life is powerful." She took the handkerchief and studied him. "Thank you for this," she whispered. "Me, your world," he nodded, touched by her gratitude. "Thank you for coming," he replied, "for trusting me." They continued deeper into the grove, finding a vine-covered archway that led to a small alcove filled with glowing lanterns hung from twisting branches. Elias switched on a gentle light, and the lanterns glowed in pastel hues. He pointed to a narrow bench carved from living wood. "Here," he said. "This is my favorite spot." They sat side by side, shoulders nearly touching. Silence settled comfortably as they watched the lanterns pulse in time with distant stars. Kale. Aaron leaned her head on Ilias's shoulder. "I never knew friendship could feel like this," she murmured. He placed a gentle hand on her cloak, feeling its soft fabric. "Friendship is a journey," he said. "It grows with time, like these orchids. Sometimes it needs patience. Sometimes it needs care." She nodded, eyes closed. In that quiet alcove, across 2 different worlds, they found a simple truth. Companionship could heal the deepest loneliness, and hope could bloom even in the darkest sky. Dr. Elias Mora guided Kelleran through the shallows of a coral-kissed lagoon on the world of Meradia, where bioluminescent sea sponges glowed like lanterns beneath the rippling water. The sun hung low in the violet sky, casting long, golden beams across the water's surface. Kelleran knelt on a smooth rock ledge, peering through her goggles at the sponge's translucent tendrils, each pulsating softly with an inner light. Elias handed her a delicate glass vial and a fine mesh net. "These sponges hold the key to a new healing serum," he explained, voice hushed with excitement. Kelleran smiled and carefully swept the net among the sponges, marveling at how they drifted like jellyfish caught in a gentle current. She hummed a quiet tune from her homeland, and Elias recognized the melody as one of greeting and hope among her people. Suddenly her foot slipped on a patch of slippery algae. Time stretched. As she lost balance, and with a soft cry she fell forward. Elias lunged to catch her arm, but in the motion her wrist scraped against a sharp piece of coral hidden beneath the water. Golden red droplets blossomed on her pale skin. Instinctively, Elias froze, heart thundering at the sight of her blood he knew could harm him if it touched his own. Yet he forced himself to stay calm. With gentle words, he cradled her wounded wrist and guided her to sit on a nearby stone slab. Kelleran's amber eyes swam with tears, and for a moment she looked frightened by her own injury. Elias took a small medical kit from his Belta compact, non-invasive patch designed to seal wounds without using adhesive that might irritate. "Hold still," he murmured, his tone steady and soft. He pressed the patch just above the cut, and a warm, soothing gel spread over her skin, stopping the bleeding almost instantly. Kelleran exhaled in relief as the pain eased. Elias kept his gaze gentle as he worked, careful not to meet her eyes until the patch was secure. When he finally looked at her, his concern shone bright. "The serum we collect today might help strengthen your blood," he said, voice full of hope.
Kelleran's
Lips quivered. She placed a trembling hand over his. "Thank you for helping me so kindly," she whispered. Elias gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, still keeping his own fingertips safely clear of her skin, and smiled. "We're companions," he reminded her. "I will not let fear guide our journey." A soft breeze stirred the orchid blossoms. On the lagoon's fringe, and the sea sponges glowed a little brighter, as if celebrating her safety. As they resumed their work, Elias showed Kelleran how to test each sponge sample with a portable analyzer. She watched intently, eager to learn her earlier fear, replaced by curiosity and determination. He guided her through the steps, layering a tiny fragment of sponge on a microslide, adding a drop of distilled water, and observing the bioluminescent reaction under a handheld scope. Her eyes lit up with wonder as she saw the spectrum of colors shift beneath the lens. By sunset, they had gathered enough samples to return to the ship's lab. Kelleran stood tall once more, her cloak drying in the warm breeze. Elias handed her a clean cloth to wipe her hands. She looked at him with gratitude woven through every fiber of her being. "You have shown me that even when I stumble, I am not alone," she said softly. Elias nodded, heart warmed by her words. "And you have shown me that courage can shine brighter than any royal jewel," he replied. Together, they made their way back across the lagoon's shore, the promise of discovery and healing guiding them onward into the unknown night. Aboard the Aurora's Hope, the stars stretched endlessly beyond the ship's windows. Dr. Elias Mora sat at his workstation, scanning the sea sponge samples collected from Meradia. Soft lights blinked across the lab, and quiet music played in the background. He glanced over at Kelleran, who stood near the holomap, her eyes studying a glowing trail of symbols floating in the air. The Vosari markings shimmered gently, forming a path through unknown space. She looked thoughtful, her fingers resting lightly on her chin. Elias stood and walked over. "What is it?" he asked kindly. Kelleran turned to him slowly. "This," she said, pointing at the symbol near the top, "is an ancient mark. It appears in the old stories of my people, Healer's Place, a sanctuary hidden within a dying star cluster. My mother once told me it was only a myth." Elias studied the map. The coordinates matched a distant, rarely explored region. "You think this place could help with your curse?" She nodded slowly. "The silent healers. They were said to possess knowledge beyond even the royal scientists. If the stories are true, they may understand what runs through my blood." Elias touched the console, magnifying the path. "It'll take us through 3 nebulous streams, past 2 gravitational rifts, and then into the still zone. Risky, but not impossible." Kelleran looked at him with hope in her eyes. "Would you go there with me?" He smiled gently. "Of course, this isn't just my journey anymore." As the ship adjusted course, Elias prepared the Auroras. Hope for the new path. Engines recalibrated, shielding systems adapted, and Kelleran sat in the co-pilot seat, watching every detail with growing interest. Elias explained the controls in simple steps, showing her how to manage trajectory, how to balance the power grid, and how to shift navigation during sudden particle changes. She learned quickly, surprising even herself. During the long travel, hours, they sat together in the viewing dome, watching space ripple past. Kelleran often asked Elias questions about Earth, about his childhood, his family, and why he chose to live among the stars. Elias spoke openly, telling her about his late grandmother who had raised him with bedtime stories of distant worlds and endless kindness. "She taught me to always listen before speaking," he said with a soft laugh. "That's how you understand people," Kelleran smiled. "My mother was the opposite. She ruled with words first. She believed silence meant weakness." Elias looked at her kindly. "And what do you believe?" She turned her gaze to the stars. "I believe silence can hold strength. Like still water before the storm. Like quiet hope." As they entered the outer edge of the star cluster, the ship began to tremble slightly. Elias adjusted the controls, guiding them through drifting fields of starlight and shadow. They passed old wrecks and scattered ruins, reminders that not all who came this way had found what they were looking for. Finally, after hours of careful navigation, the silent healer's temple appeared, floating in the void like a pearl in a black sea. It was not grand or golden. It was simple, circular, peaceful, made of ancient stone and glowing crystal veins. Kelleran stood by the window, her breath caught in her throat. "It's real," she whispered. Her hands trembled. "It's really real." Elias placed a calming hand near her shoulder. "We've come this far together. Let's go see what truths it holds." As they prepared to disembark, Kelleran turned to him. "Even if they cannot lift the curse," she said softly, "you have already healed a part of me I thought was lost." Elias looked at her gently. "And you've shown me that the stars aren't just for studying, they're for sharing." Together they stepped onto the landing pad, side by side, not as scientist and royal, but as companions bound by trust, courage, and something quietly beautiful growing between them. Hope. The air around the silent healer's temple was calm and still, as if the universe itself had paused to listen. The circular halls glowed with soft light from the crystal veins lining the walls. Kelleran walked beside Dr. Elias Mora in silence, her fingers lightly touching the smooth stone surface. She could feel something beneath her feet, energy, ancient and gentle. The temple did not feel cold or powerful. It felt peaceful, like a memory waiting to be remembered. A tall, robed figure approached them without sound. His face was calm, lined with age, but kind. "Welcome," he said softly. "The temple has been waiting for you, Princess." Kelleran looked surprised. "You know who I am?" Lorien nodded. "The curse you carry has been written in the crystals since before your birth. But healing is not given freely, must be earned through understanding." He turned to Elias. "You may walk with her, but the trials are hers alone." Elias met Kelleran's eyes and nodded with quiet support. "You can do this," he whispered, "and I'll be waiting for you." She smiled softly, then followed Lorien into the chamber of trials. The first room was filled with mirror stall, curved and endless. Lorien's voice echoed gently. "To pass this trial, you must find your true reflection." Kelleran walked slowly among the images, each mirror showing a different version of herself, frail, cursed, frightened, proud, but none felt true. Then she saw it, a mirror showing her as she was now cloaked in violet, eyes open, uncertain but strong. She stepped closer and touched the surface. The mirror shimmered, and the door ahead opened silently. The second room held a circle of stones, each pulsing with light. A quiet voice filled the air. "Speak not with words, but with feeling." She sat in the center and closed her eyes. Slowly, she reached inside her heart, not to explain, but to feel. She thought of her fear, her loneliness, her hope. The lights around her began to change, color soft pinks, gentle greens, deep golds. She opened her eyes, and the stones now formed a path forward. The final room was quiet and empty. A small pedestal stood in the center, holding a single crystal. Lorien's voice returned. "To be healed, you must choose power or peace." Kelleran walked to the pedestal and stared at the crystal. She knew what the choice meant. To keep the curse was to remain feared, but strong. To lose it was to become normal free, but no longer protected. She thought of Elias, of the way he looked at her, not with fear, but kindness. She thought of dancing among flowers and laughing in a ship's kitchen. She reached forward and touched the crystal. A warm light flooded the room. Her heart thudded in her chest, but there was no pain-only release. The crystal melted into her palm, and the warmth spread through her blood. It was over. The curse was gone. When Kelleran stepped back into the temple hall, Elias stood waiting. The look on her face was different, now lighter, freer. She walked straight into his arms, and he held her gently, careful as always, but this time he didn't have to worry about her blood. She could feel his warmth, real and safe. "You did it," he whispered. She pulled back and nodded, her eyes full of emotion. "We did it," she said. They walked side by side out of the temple. The stars above them blinked softly, like they, too, were watching. Kelleran no longer felt like a cursed royal or a fleeing stranger. She felt like herself, a traveler, a friend, and something more. And with Elias beside her, the universe no longer felt so lonely. The Aurora's hope floated quietly through the dark sea of stars, its silver hull glowing faintly under the soft light of distant suns. Inside the ship, peace filled the air, peace, and something warmer. Dr. Elias Morris stood at the control panel, gently adjusting the ship's course toward the next system. His movements were slow, thoughtful. Behind him, Kelleran entered the bridge, no longer wearing her royal cloak or circlet. Instead, she wore a simple tunic and soft boots, just another traveler among the stars. He turned and smiled when he saw her. "Sleep well." She nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Very well," she said softly. "It was the first time I dreamed without fear in years." Elias tilted his head. "No dreams of the curse?" Kelleran shook her head, stepping closer. "No chains, no thrones, just stars. Just peace." They stood side by side at the wide window, watching a field of golden dust drift past. Kelleran's eyes sparkled in the light. "I've never seen the universe like this before," she whispered. "It used to feel like a cage. Now it feels like home." Elias glanced at her gently. "'Cause now you're free." She turned. To him, her voice lower. "No, because now I'm not alone." Those words sat in the air like a quiet truth, gentle but deep. Elias's heart stirred. He had never asked for royalty. He had never dreamed of curses or temples or ancient legends. All he had wanted was a friend, someone to share the silence, someone to laugh with under the stars. And now he had that. He had her. "I was afraid, he admitted, his eyes still on the stars. "When I saw your blood that day, I wanted to run, but I didn't. Something inside me said, 'Stay. She needs you.'" Kelleran smiled, her fingers brushing his sleeve. "You did more than stay. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." He looked at her, really looked at her, the way her shoulders had relaxed, the way her eyes no longer carried that hidden fear. She had changed, not into someone new, but into someone more whole, someone stronger because she had let herself. "Be soft, I think," Elias said slowly. "That companionship isn't about being the same. It's about choosing each other, even with the differences." Kelleran nodded, tears gathering gently in her eyes. "You never treated me like a princess," she said with a laugh. "You treated me like a person. I think that saved me." Soft chime echoed through the room as the ship exited the dust field. Stars opened before them, bright, inviting, endless. Elias set the ship to auto course and turned to her fully. "Where do you want to go next?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "Somewhere quiet," she said. "Somewhere where we can plant something, grow something. Together." Elias smiled. "I know just the place." As they left the bridge, their steps fell into rhythm. No longer strangers, no longer bound by duty or fear, just two companions sharing a ship, a journey, and something deeper something that didn't need to be named, and somewhere in the vast silence of space, hope blossomed. Not the kind that burns bright and fades fast, but the kind that lingers soft, steady, and strong. The kind that turns even the darkest sky into home.